Every glittering trophy hides a silent scream. Think of the trophy child, a kid who earns every accolade, everyone's perfect little prize. Yet behind that golden halo lies a performance prison, where applause was the only door that opened, and any stumble was a crack threatening to collapse the whole facade. First, I'm yours as a neuro-archaeologist digging through the layers of the mind, unearthing the shredded blueprints of those early expectations. First, I'll show you how the achievement drug you were fed turned into a suffocating golden mask, and why the weight you've carried feels heavier than any gold medal could. Stick around until the end, and you'll learn exactly how to spot the hidden fissures in that perfection and plant the first seed of freedom. It's not just a story, it's a map to untangling the trauma that still lurks beneath the surface of your everyday life. The trophy child. How being a parent's pride turned you into an object rather than a person. The moment a trophy lands in a child's hands, a silent agreement forms. From now on, your worth is measured by medals. Parents often herald this piece of shiny metal as proof of a child's forever bright future. Yet that same applause can shadow a child's sense of self, converting the child into a walking award rather than a person with feelings and questions. The neuro-archaeologist in me digs through patterns of eye contact, lingering smiles, and the relentless urge to pounce on every success. Parents who won't quiet their own anxieties tend to ask, "What do you want for school?" and "Who will win the next game?" The lingered, unspoken pressure acts like a compact. Child's personal desires are forever tucked behind an invisible checklist. In the homes of high-achievement families, the tiny act of flagging off a test score can feel like the closing of a lid, sealing the child inside a gilded prison. On the surface, trophies sparkle with celebration. Behind that sparkle, reliable evidence shows increased rates of anxiety among those labeled trophy children. One study monitoring middle school students found that those with the highest parental expectation scores reported a 50% higher likelihood of clinically significant worry. The pervading fear that a single mistake could tarnish the golden mask makes kids overthink and self-critical. They rehearse perfect responses and adopt the nervous energy of a performance, craving approval like a drug that keeps pushing them forward. When the daily routine revolves around practicing, reading, and competing, the child's identity swings from personal wonder to public illusion. A student who once asked, "What do you love?" now answers winning. When an essay is dismissed without comment, the silence feels like a verdict rather than a prompt for improvement. Confronting this dynamic isn't simple. Parents need to recognize that cheering is fine, but the narrative they spin must include "you are enough," even when you don't win. Only then does the child's inner voice hold room for growth outside the glittering, gold-wrapped world of trophies. The performance prison. Why you learn to hide any flaw or real emotion to maintain your perfect status. Shaking the childhood cocoon can feel like opening 1,000 fragile windows at once. When a parent whispers, "You're so perfect," the child interviews itself the next morning, fretting whether their tiny misstep will crack the polished image. This early script turns into a silent contract. Shine, but whisper your flaws below the surface. Across countless families, the trophy child emerges with one ironclad trait: consistent perfection, while the mosaic of raw emotions dissolves into a hard-hued golden mask. Parental praise often becomes a performance drug. A study on children of high achievers highlighted that constant reinforcement of flawless output increases self-imposed standards. This creates a feedback loop. Mistakes spark critical comments, so the child is left nudging beneath scrutiny. In the classroom, a brilliant math student remembers being praised for never making errors. That comment became a mantra, and careless miscalculations were no longer rehearsed but rehearsed and erased with furtive apologies. The child's delicate sense of self-worth becomes entrenched in a prison where every misstep feels like an irreversible charge. Psychoanalytic theory and neurodevelopmental research both underscore how the brain's reward circuitry wires itself to repetitive praise. When a child receives dopamine surges only for flawless work, the brain maps a hardwired pattern: exit error, persist excellence. The golden mask is multidimensional. It shields the child from the pain of rejection but leaves them feeling perpetually camouflaged. Cases of adolescents rushing to adulthood often surface with internalized anxiety, depressive rumination, and a pronounced fear of failure. For many, the internal ticking alarm is a residual echo of being scolded for expressing vulnerabilities during school parent-teacher meetings. Those who survived internalizing this performance prison report that adulthood feels like a game of chess with invisible constraints. Bottom-line trauma surfaces when such individuals pair disappointment, a faint stumble in a boardroom presentation, with memories of being admonished for a misstep in the hallway. The rhetorical haunting is simple. First almost made a mistake. The innocent human desire for authentic experience is now mired behind a golden mask that drums the rhythm of unbroken excellence. But decomposing this armor is possible. Therapy, reflective writing, and engaging in failure labs like improved workshops help reclaim genuine emotions from the clutch of overperformance, turning the performance prison from a cage into a creative laboratory. The achievement drug, the biological reason why your brain is addicted to external praise and terrified of silence. A recent study in cognitive neuroscience shows that when a child receives praise, the brain's reward circuitry, specifically the ventral striatum, fires like a fireworks display. Dopamine surges, marking the moment as pleasurable and reinforcing the behavior that earned it. This biochemical cue quickly hardens the pathway that reads external approval as the gold standard. Because the pathway is so sticky, the child learns to map self-worth onto applause. When applause stops, the deactivation of dopamine signaling produces a drop in mood, akin to a low tide that leaves the mind raw and exposed. The brain's fear circuitry, involving the amygdala, reacts to this sudden quiet by amplifying anxiety. The result is a state where silence feels like the metal of a prison, tight, cold, and full of unseen threats. Across modern learning environments, children are routinely rewarded for test scores and project presentations. Each crown minted reinforces the chemical loop, praise dopamine release reward expectation. Over time, the anticipation of applause overrides intrinsic motivation. The child's internal clock rewrites to tick with each external cue, turning learning into a treadmill where the runner can't see the finish line unless the crowd cheers. Consequently, the brain treats unsanctioned moments, no teacher's nod, no peer applause, as punishment. The addiction to praise has practical consequences. In adolescence, the teenage brain is still developing prefrontal regulatory regions that would normally temper emotional responses. When the prefrontal cortex is constantly bombarded with dopamine pulses from external accolades, it becomes resistant to self-generated motivation. Teens often feel drained when they must work without immediate recognition, leading to burnout or avoidance of self-initiated projects. A study following high-achieving students showed that those who valued internal mastery performed better on tasks that required sustained effort in the absence of visible feedback. To disrupt the cycle, educators and parents can shift the reward system, introducing small, self-chosen goals and celebrating personal progress, rather than just public recognition, can guide the brain toward an intrinsic reward loop. For example, a teacher might allow a student to track their own growth on a visual chart at home, offering praise for the process rather than the outcome. This gradual recalibration teaches the brain that silent satisfaction also releases dopamine, reducing the urgency for external applause. In the workplace, burnout among high performers often stems from the same biological mechanics. Employees who are continuously cycled through performance reviews and bonus celebrations find that taking a quiet day leads to a pronounced dip in motivation. Companies that reward consistent effort in less visible ways, such as offering flexible working hours or internal skill development programs, help employees rebuild a healthier dopamine profile that appreciates steady self-growth over episodic praise. Ultimately, the brain's attachment to praise is a well-wired mechanism for survival. Early humans earned food by performing tasks that impressed their group. Modern expectations hijack this circuitry, turning the inner self into a performance prison. Understanding this biological underpinnings allows us to design environments where the internal voice can emerge without fearing the silent void. Fear of the fall. Why even a small mistake feels like a total death of your identity. A single slip on a standardized test can feel like a cave collapse beneath a child who has grown up in a shadow of trophies. The moment a wrong answer appears, the brain's reward circuitry suddenly reverts from joyful collection to low-grade tonic punishment, as if the entire self-portrait were being stripped away. Neuroarchaeology tells us that the memories of applause are buried in the hippocampal striatal axis. When a child's hand has always tightened around a perfectly folded report card, that neural system clicks on each new success. The scent of achievement lingers in sense of smell, because the olfactory and limbic areas have learned to associate scent with reward. When a mistake surfaces, the mismatch between expectation and outcome triggers a cascade of cortisol and a loss of dopamine, reviving fear of falling. Consider Sarah, a high school pitcher who won every championship. Her badge was the golden medal of a perfect season. One loss in her senior year sent an electric shock through her euphoria. In the locker room, the flicker of the scoreboard was a mirror reflecting her self-value. The achievement drug that had once propelled her now felt like a toxic potion. A single bad pitch erased years of earned esteem, leaving her feeling unworthy of the golden mask she wore into every game. The lesson is that what feels like a life-ending catastrophe is often a hyperreactive echo of past triumphs. When the performance prison locks you into a narrow definition of worth, mindful reassignment of identity becomes essential. Naming the slip, not as a character flaw but as a move in a larger game, softens the blow. Shifting from first must stay perfect to first can learn from errors rewires the brain's reward map, allowing the golden mask to remain cool and intact even after a tumble. Breaking the mask, practical steps to stop performing and start discovering the human being behind the trophy. Almost a quarter of people who grew up as trophy children admit that more than half of their adult life feels like living in a performance prison. In that skull shrapnel-like shell, every praise they once felt like a medal now feels heavy, an added weight that pushes them toward the edge. The achievement drug, success depends on maintaining that glow, and the golden mask waits forever, enforcing the illusion that if they drop its glitter, they will crumble. The trauma runs deeper than the disappointment of a skipped award. It sits in the blood, the same veins that once carried the excitement of a new grade or a record-breaking score, now lugging a constant, quiet ache of autocracy. It's hard to stare at that ache and call it something other than tiredness. The closer we lean in, the clearer it becomes. Performance, identity, and self-worth are tangled, like roots in a knot. Start the excavation by pausing for a moment when you feel the urge to prove something. Put a notebook next to the bed and jot down each check on your to-do list that triggered you. Draw a circle around the parts that were repeated on your daily schedule, like respond to email by noon or don't let the class talk. Because the golden mask will insist that you keep minting points, these lists are the surface rocks that hide the roots. See if the chain of thoughts is anchored in old expectations or current needs. Feel the tension, note it, then compare the next few days. When the pattern of performance shifts, when you look for patterns that aren't about accolades, your own voice quietly starts to surface, stirring a feeling you recognize as just needing to be here. Next, refuse the doors of the golden prison. Say no with a calm, simple voice. Attach tiny notes saying keep space for myself to your phone's lock screen or people who are likely to pry the question from the on-stage version of you. Let the gentle rhythm of your breath carry the no like a steady guard dog. When pressure drags you toward the performance prison again, rest a hand on your chest and identify the exact feeling. You might feel tightness or exhaustion. Then say, first we'll practice setting boundaries. A boundary can be as simple as no emails after 8 p.m. or first we'll miss the competition this year. When you enforce the boundary, notice how the golden mask starts to crack. A new conversation begins, mapped with a fresh tongue. Finally, reclaim a concrete piece of your humanity by scheduling just for fun blocks. Invite a friend to play an unstructured game or make a coffee while listening to music that isn't a playlist of top hits but a jumble of your childhood sounds. Notice the way the eye lifts off the great metal at that moment. See the humor spark in a wrong joke or the warmth felt after an honest conversation. When you say today, first am just the person who likes pizza over dinner, not the kid who won it a decade early, you tighten the loop. That loop, once it's personalized, becomes an archaeological dig that turns the golden mask into a collection of stones. Nice to look at, but no longer the whole story. Picture this. Your mind unfurls like an archaeological dig, but instead of gold artifacts, you're unearthing jagged shards of glass. Every praise, every perfect comment echoing in your skull, a relentless weight pulling you down as you try to keep the surface intact. That's the reality inside the trophy child's skull, living inside the performance prison where every move is measured and every silence feels like a sentence. We've walked through the four ghosts of that life: the trophy child, the performance prison, the achievement drug, and the golden mask. Each one is a layer that's pressed on the brain's plasticity, rewiring the reward circuit so your heart learns to chase a false currency, approval, instead of joy. The achievement drug pumped dopamine, giving you a fleeting high that left you craving more, while the golden mask forced you to smooth over the cracks, hiding the loneliness behind perfect smiles. If you've felt your pulse quicken whenever the room falls silent, or if you hit a wall when you try to start your own will, you're staring at the same jagged fracture. You're not alone. This is what trauma from high expectations looks like etched into your psyche, a pattern that's been carried into adulthood, shaping relationships, self-esteem, and risk. The good news? You can begin to chip away at the mask, loosen the bars of the prison, find a healthier rhythm than the drug's buzz. In our next episode, we'll dig deeper into the neurobiology of self-compassion and give you practical tools to rebuild trust with your own brain. So if you're ready to let the brain's cliffs settle and start clearing the wreckage, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment. Share which ghost you feel most trapped by. Let's excavate together and reclaim the real treasure hidden beneath the golden child's facade.